Welcome to this episode of The Wisdom of Paramahansa Yogananda, brought to you by Self-Realization Fellowship, where each week you can receive inspiration and guidance from Paramahansa Yogananda's Kriya Yoga teachings. The subject of this talk is Yoga and the Steps to Unconditional Love by Brother Bhumananda.
In India, there's a well-known story about Krishna and the sage Narada, where it is said once that Narada was visiting with Krishna, and he said, "Lord, can you please explain to me about this Maya, this cosmic delusion?" And Krishna said, "Narada, Maya cannot be explained. It has to be experienced. Come." And so they walked out into the desert, and after a while, Narada was wondering, well, how am I going to learn about Maya by walking in the desert? But Krishna said to him, "Narada, I promise you, by the end of our walk, you will truly understand Maya." So they continued for a while. And suddenly, Krishna said, "Narada, I'm very hot and thirsty, and I can walk no further. Please go fetch me a glass of water." So Narada went off to get water for Krishna. So he soon came to a small village, and he went to the well, and there was a young, beautiful woman at the well, and they started talking a little bit. And after a while, Narada said, "But who are you? I've never met anyone so well-mannered and modest and pure and good." And she blushed, and she said, "Well, my father, he's the chief of the village. Would you like to meet him?" So Narada met the father, who invited him for dinner, and by the end of dinner, Narada was so taken with this young woman that he asked her father for her hand in marriage. And the father readily agreed, saying, "I can see you're a highly spiritual man. I would be honored to have you as my son-in-law." So they were married, and it was a wonderful marriage. She was an ideal companion. They had several beautiful children, and then the father died. And Narada became the village chief, and the people of the village revered him because he was always making decisions grounded in wisdom and compassion. They just idolized him. And it was when he was at the very peak of his success that the disaster struck. There were terrific rains and flooding, and the village was destroyed, and Narada and his family was fleeing the floodwaters when suddenly a large wave came and swept away one of his children, and he desperately dived after the boy, but he couldn't find him. And when he went after the boy, a still bigger wave came and swept away his wife and the rest of the children. So it was total disaster. Narada lost everything, and he was lying on a rock, crying with immense grief in his heart. And suddenly, he hears this voice. "Narada, where is my glass of water?" And he opens his eyes, and there's no flooding, no destroyed village. He's alone with Krishna in the desert. And Krishna says to him, "Now you understand the power of my Maya." The thing is this isn't just a nice story. This is the story of each and every one of us. We think this world around us is so real. It is not real. There is nothing here that endures. At death, we say goodbye to it all, and we transition to a completely different existence. And the whole purpose of the Kriya Yoga teachings that our Guru Paramahansa Yogananda gives is to awaken us from this terrific dream of delusion, this hypnosis, and to show us a greater reality. Paramahansaji said this, "You are all gods if you only knew it. Behind the wave of your consciousness is the sea of God's presence. You must look within. Paramahansaji gives many wonderful thoughts and affirmations to help us to break this hypnosis. And so I'd like us to practice one now. And so please repeat this affirmation with me. And when we repeat an affirmation, first of all, close your eyes, put your gaze and attention at the point between the eyebrows. And then when we repeat an affirmation, one of the keys, don't just say it and don't just think it. When you use an affirmation, you have to feel it. You have to feel with your soul the power, the vibratory power of the truth in that affirmation that you are uttering. So please repeat with me. The eternal life of God flows through me. I am immortal. Behind the wave of my mind is the ocean of cosmic consciousness. You can open your eyes now. With all the temptations and restlessness and busyness of the world, it seems we can get stuck here forever, isn't it? It's hard to break free. But the saving grace is in every soul is implanted the memory of its oneness with God and the perfect fulfillment that's found in that oneness. Every soul has within that perfect love of God. Always has been with us, always will be with us. And because that is there, and part and parcel of our being, we can never be happy with anything in this external world, can never be fully satisfied. So that's creation. There's these two basic forces. There's Maya, this force of delusion that's perpetuating the whole show of that's based on relativities, where yes, in this world there's happiness, but there's sorrow. Yes, there's pleasure, but pain. Yes, health, but sickness. Yes, youth, but old age. Life, but death. It never stops. But then there's that other force that's greater, stronger, bigger. Love. That cosmic force that is always urging us in subtle ways to walk the higher path, to live a noble life, to give love and compassion to others. Guruji explains it in this way, and this is very beautiful. The pull of the Lord's love that pursues every soul, even onto the farthest reaches of delusion. I know of one man, and this is a true story. He was a terrible drug addict. So one day, he woke up in this strange room in a drug house, and by his bedside, there's a tattered paperback book. It was Autobiography of a Yogi. So he read it. And he thought, well, let me try to meditate. He had a meditation of several hours, and it was a blissful, ecstatic meditation. It was like a samadhi. But afterwards, he still had the drug habit. He was still an addict, and he struggled with that for some years, but he could never, ever forget that blissful meditation he had, and he kept trying to conquer, and one day he broke free. He was no longer a drug addict, and he spent the rest of his life as a beautiful disciple of this path. That's that great love of God that never gives up on the devotee. Now, in the Bhagavad Gita, the revered scripture of India, there's a verse there, one of my favorites. This is also in Lesson 5 of the Self-Realization Fellowship lessons. It says, I am impartial toward all beings. To me, none is hateful, none is dear. But those who give me their heart's love are in me, as I am in them. So when the Lord says, I'm impartial toward all beings, to me none is hateful, none is dear, what does that mean? Here, God is expressing in his universal aspect as cosmic law, the law of cause and effect that runs creation, that acts impartially. In other words, if you perform a good action, the reward is a good result. There's a blessing there. And if you perform a dark action, an evil action, the result is going to be a bad result. There's going to be suffering. The law of cause and effect. But then Krishna goes on, but those who give me their heart's love are in me, as I am in them. And this is the transforming power of devotion. Love for God. In other words, yes, there are laws that run creation, but the greatest law, the supreme law above all others, is love. Paramahansa said, God's love is so all-embracing that no matter what wrongs we have done, he forgives us. If we love him with all our hearts, he wipes out our karma. I know sometimes people can suffer from guilt, and this can be a real hard thing to overcome. Maybe before you came to the spiritual path, at times you lived a life that, how do we say, wasn't so good, wasn't the best. Maybe you did some things that you were ashamed of. Or even after we come to the spiritual path, sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes they can be serious mistakes. And so there's the memory of these wrong things that you did in the past. And people, we can feel bad about ourselves. And some can be almost overwhelmed with feelings of remorse and regret. And you may have these thoughts, I'm not worthy of the guru, or I'm not a good devotee, or even I'm a bad person. If you've ever gone through this, I have a question for you. Where do you think those thoughts are coming from? Do you think they're coming from God or the guru or your soul? Or is it just possible that they're coming from Maya, this force of delusion that's trying to keep you enslaved? So, if you have feelings of guilt, I have another quote from the Bhagavad Gita for you. So the first one, and we covered it, but those who give me their heart's love are in me, as I am in them. And then the very next verses of the Bhagavad Gita, this is chapter 9, verses 30 and 31, read as follows. Even a consummate evildoer who turns away from all else to worship me exclusively may be counted among the good because of his righteous resolve. He will fast become a virtuous man and obtain unending peace. Tell all assuredly, O Arjuna, that my devotee never perishes. So that's God's response to your feelings of guilt. My devotee never perishes. Whatever troubles you're facing, whatever bad karma you've created in the past, if you keep seeking God, if you keep trying to please God, The time will come when suddenly, perhaps when you least expect it, he reaches down and intervenes and lifts you above that karma, and you're free from that obstacle. But we have to keep trying. Once, Guruji was asked what, for the average devotee, were the most inspiring words in his autobiography of a yogi. And he said they were these words from his guru, Swami Sri Yukteswar. Forget the past. The vanished lives of all men are dark with many shames. Human conduct is ever unreliable until man is anchored in the divine. Everything in future will improve if you are making the spiritual effort now. So, if you have doubts about yourself, you have to make that your daily affirmation. Everything in future is going to improve if I make the spiritual effort now. And then do it. Meditate daily. Apply the teachings daily. Don't think about the past. That's just not important. Think about the wonderful life you're going to create now through your practice of the teachings now. Just be so busy making spiritual effort that there's absolutely no room in your consciousness for feelings of guilt or doubt. Now I want to cover another aspect. In learning to love God, we're going through a process of evolution. In his book, The Holy Science, Swami Sri Yukteswar talks about removing the 8 meannesses of the heart. And the 8 meannesses of the heart, qualities like hatred, shame, fear, prejudice, qualities like that. And he also talks about progressing through the 5 stages of the heart, where we start with the dark heart, which is filled with ignorance and delusion. We progress to the propelled heart, where the devotee is consciously seeking God, and then to the steady heart, the devoted heart, and ultimately the devotee attains the clean heart, where we're so spiritualized, so purified, we're fully able to receive the direct experience of God. So our hearts and our capacity to love God is going through this process of growth and evolution, and this reflects also in our ability to love others. Some years back in our Self-Realization magazine, there was a very good article published called The Stepping Stones of Love by Bruce Brander. And in this article, he talks about 3 levels of love. So the first level is eros, or romantic love. And this is the type of love that's worshipped in the world, where you meet somebody and you're swept off your feet in that blissful feeling of falling in love. And you see this in all the books and the movies and billboards everywhere. And so many people think of love as, well, this is it. But there's a problem here. It doesn't last. One psychologist studied hundreds of couples, and his conclusion was this feeling of falling in love lasts on the average of 18 to 36 months. And then it goes. And most marriage therapists will agree that for a marriage to succeed and endure, you have to progress beyond that eros, that initial love, to something more enduring, stronger. So the author of this article, he calls romance love at the beginner's level, because it primarily is self-centered. The emphasis is on how the other person is making me happy, how they're fulfilling me. Now, the next state of love is what we call philia, which is the love of friendship. Here there's a shift where the emphasis is not only on what the person's receiving, but it's on making the beloved one happy as well, and on sharing experiences together. So it's a higher form of love. But there's still a higher form. The Greeks called it agape, unconditional love. One well-known psychologist, Erich Fromm, he describes agape in this way: an active striving for the growth and happiness of the loved person, rooted in one's own capacity to love. You see this in the love of the saints, where they find God, they experience that tremendous divine love of God within, and from that center of consciousness, everywhere they are, and whoever crosses their path, they love. And they don't even think of receiving anything in return. They love because they cannot help but express that divine communion they have in that outpouring of love to all who cross their path. They love because they love. So when you understand that our capacity, our ability to love is going through a process of expansion, growth, evolution, I think it helps us to understand why we have to suffer. Because for all of us, there's those times when we go through extraordinarily difficult circumstances. It can be losing someone you love, financial difficulties, health challenges. Sometimes these things just seem completely overwhelming. So why do we go through these things? Of course, there's the law of karma, cause and effect. But sometimes we know about karma, and we're doing everything we're supposed to be doing. We meditate, we're trying to be good to others, we're trying to love God, and we've been doing this for a long, long time, and still we get clobbered. And the clobbering continues for a long time. And so I think it's natural to ask the question, why? Why can't God, in His compassion, He is compassionate, why can't God just take away this karma from the past? Why do I have to keep going through this again and again and again? I've been trying so hard for so long to be good. Well, the best answer I've come up with to this question, why suffering, I would answer that with another question. But why are we here? But why are we here? To remove the 8 meannesses of the heart, to go from the dark heart filled with delusion to the clean heart where we're fully able to receive the full manifestation of God. And if I look at my own life, and if I look at those periods that have been the most difficult experiences in my life, I can see that I certainly did not enjoy them, but they did teach me, perhaps like nothing else can teach me, they taught me how to love. It's learning how to love. That's the purpose. In the beginning, we love God and we're thinking about all the wonderful blessings He's going to give to us. But then we go through our dark nights of the soul, our trials. And when you hold your course steady and you keep loving God, Lord, right now I can't see any light at the end of the tunnel, but I'm not going to stop. I love you and I'm not going to stop that. My course is set. When you set your course in that way, then your love becomes spiritualized, strengthened, purified. The hallmark of divine love, and what distinguishes it from the more limited human love, divine love doesn't change. It is steady. Daya Mata put it this way: if in the darkness the mind never wavers, if love and longing never grow weak, it is then that you prove to yourself you really have the love of God. And you know, spirituality, it's not just what we express in the meditation and through prayer, although that's vital, of course. But that love we also have to express to others in the hard, cold light of day, sometimes when it's not so easy to express that love. When I entered the ashram, I guess you could say, my father didn't take too well to that decision. And so he had a little bit of a negative, critical attitude toward the monastic life in the ashram. But I never took that personally. And sometimes he'd make disparaging comments. And when he would do that, I'd always try to turn it the other way to a more positive spin, sometimes by making a little joke or something. I remember once I had been visiting him, so I was about to leave, and he gave me some spending money, which was nice and thoughtful of him. And then he kind of looked suspiciously at me, and he said, now when you get back to the ashram, they aren't going to take this away from you, are they? And I didn't get offended. How dare you talk about the ashram that way? That wasn't my way. Instead, what I did, I decided, well, let me have a little fun with this. And I pretended to look real worried. And I said, well, Dad, you've got a point. And I said, what's going to happen, as soon as I get back to the ashram, these two big monks are going to grab me. And one of them's going to twist my arm behind my back. And the other's going to slap me and say, okay, Pipsqueak, where's the cash? So I made him laugh. And that helped him to see how silly he was being. And whenever something like that would happen, I would just turn it the other way. And what I found was very quickly, he stopped making the negative or critical comments. It kind of changed. And then his response was, he'd kind of give me a perplexed look. And he'd say, well, you certainly seem happy. And I'd tell him, I am happy. I'm very happy. And then later, especially as his body got more frail, he changed even more. Now, you have to understand, my father, he wasn't a religious man, never went to church or temple or anything like that, never had any spiritual practices, as far as I know. So one day, I'm visiting and he's talking to me, and out of the blue, he says, well, I've started to meditate and pray. And I was shocked. And I said, well, that's wonderful, Dad. That's wonderful. And then I said, but tell me, when you pray to God, what do you say to God? And he said, I say, Lord, let me learn to love you. Oh, I was so moved by that, because I had given him a recording of Sri Daya Mata, who's such a saintly example for us following this path. And on that recording, she had expressed that very thought. She said that multiple times, and I'd like to read to you some words from her book, Enter the Quiet Heart. Learn to love God deeply. If you don't know how, then ceaselessly pray, God, teach me to love you. Give me love. I stand before you with all my frustrations, anguish, sorrows, and disappointments, longing for understanding. Teach me what love is. So if you don't feel devotion, get that book, Enter the Quiet Heart by Sri Daya Mata, and start practicing that thought. It will come with practice. The thing is, don't expect life to always be smooth and easy. It just isn't going to work that way. That's not the nature of it. Life is a school, and when you're in school, you're tested. That's the nature of school. In the Middle Ages, there was a symbol that was commonly used in the literature. It was called the Wheel of Fortune, or sometimes the Wheel of Life. And there would be a spirit turning this big wheel, and on top of the wheel would be a man sitting with a crown and robes, looking like he was on top of the world. And so this represented someone at the top of all the prosperity. For Narada, this is when he's chief of the village. Everyone loves him. He has the ideal good wife and all the beautiful children. But the wheel's turning. So halfway down the wheel, you see the same man, and this time he's falling. In disarray, his clothes are tattered, and he's looking very worried. And this is Narada when the floods have struck and destroyed the village, and he's fleeing with his family, and he doesn't know what to do. And the wheel turns. And so now you see the man at the bottom of the wheel, forlorn, complete disarray, in total despair. For Narada, his family has been swept away. He's lost everything. Total catastrophe. The wheel's still turning. So halfway up the wheel, you see the man again. Now he has some nicer clothes and he's looking hopeful. So Narada has met another young, beautiful woman, and he's starting over again. And then it comes back to the top. The man's sitting again with the crown and the robes. But of course, there's a huge issue here that hasn't been addressed. The wheel is still turning. It never stops. In the early 6th century, there was a Roman philosopher by the name of Boethius, and he wrote a famous work called The Consolation of Philosophy. And he used this illustration quite frequently, the Wheel of Fortune. And he points out that there's only one place where one is protected, and that's the center of the wheel, because it doesn't move. And in this dialogue he wrote that takes place between this magical spirit of philosophy and a character with his own name of Boethius, the spirit points out that suffering takes place not because of what we experience, but because of our wrong attitude toward the experience, and that true happiness, the only happiness that lasts, lies within. And this very much echoes the more ancient teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. Reading from the Bhagavad Gita. O son of Kunti Arjuna, because sense pleasures spring from outward contacts and have beginning and end, they are begetters only of misery. No sage seeks happiness from them. And so that's what we have to just burn into our consciousness. You cannot obtain lasting happiness through any experience in this external world that comes to us through the 5 senses. It does not exist. Another quote from the Bhagavad Gita. Unattracted to the sensory world, the yogi experiences the ever-new joy inherent in the self. Engaged in divine union of the soul with spirit, he attains bliss indestructible. Maya is the rim of the circle, constantly moving, ever changing. The center of the wheel is God, our soul's experience of its oneness with God, and the science of yoga, such as the Kriya Yoga teachings that our Guru gives, takes us, shifts our consciousness from the turning edge to the unchanging center. So when you're struggling, just keep practicing the teachings with patience, with faith, with devotion, the love of your heart. And realize too that no matter how strong that pull of the world on you may feel, and sometimes it can be quite strong, God's love is stronger, bigger, more powerful. And the way we tune into that love, one of the greatest ways, is by meditation. Master said, when you meditate, love grows. When you meditate, love grows. And we also tune into that power of love by developing a personal, close relationship with God's channel, the Guru. And so this last part of my talk, I want to spend just a few moments on that. I came to this path about 25 years or so after Yogananda left this world. And at that time, there were still a lot of disciples who had known the Guru in person. And so for those of us who came a little later, I think it was quite understandable that there was a thought that was expressed quite predominantly among the devotees, oh, if only I had come earlier by a few years, I just missed him. I can't remember having that thought even once. Not even once. And the reason, that presence of the Guru that I felt was so strong that very quickly the love flowing from the Guru to me, his disciple, became the predominant force in my life without question. I remember shortly after I started with the lessons, I'd be sometimes walking late at night on the street, and suddenly I'd turn my head real quick. And I always felt if I did it at the right time, I could see the blessed Guru in form because his presence was that strong. Wherever I went, I felt he was with me. You know, you think of the beautiful relationship that Krishna had with the gopis, or that Christ had with his little inner band of close disciples. We can have that too. And it's not hard. It's not hard at all. Two thoughts that Paramahansa expressed that have been molding influences in my own life. First, he said, to those who think me near, I will be near. And you will see, as you cultivate that feeling that he is with me, he is near, he does become a living presence. You know it not with your head, you know it with your heart, your soul, your intuition. He is near. And so here's an experiment you can try. When you have a decision to make, and this can be a big one or a little one, put yourself in the presence of the Guru and just ask yourself deeply with your heart, what would you have me do here, Guruji? And you will feel his divine response without question, guaranteed. This is how we put our lives in accord with divine wisdom. And then the second thing that Paramahansa said, when I am gone, the teachings will be the Guru. Through the SRF teachings, you will be in tune with me and with the great Gurus who sent me. You know, Self-Realization Fellowship is a world movement, and so we have ashrams and temples and retreats and meditation centers and groups all over the world. And we also have our website, the online services, and I think that will continue to grow, offering many, many different programs and things. But no matter how big we get, the essence of what SRF is will always be the most simplest of things. It will always be very, very simple. And the way I would describe it is this. You're in a little forest ashram hermitage, and every day you go and you sit at the feet of your beloved Guru, and you meditate, and you absorb his teachings, and he fills your heart and mind with boundless peace, love divine, ever new joy. Every day, through His blessings, the cup of your God realization expands a little bit. So here we are, we're devotees and we're all over the world, and we have outer roles to play, and for each of us the circumstances will be unique and different. But by sincerely, earnestly, devotedly meditating and practicing the Guru's teachings, when we do that, what happens? We enter that little forest ashram hermitage that is inhabited by the living presence of our God-united Guru. We open our hearts and souls to Him, and He fills us with that perfect love divine, that unlimited love of God. So that's the opportunity that Paramahansaji has given to those who would follow this path. And when he met his own Guru, Swami Sri Yukteswar, he used these words to describe his own feelings about that. And I think they apply equally to all of us who consider him our Guru, Paramahansaji. So he said, "A lifelong shadow lifted from my heart. The vague search hither and yon was over. I had found eternal shelter in a true Guru."
This has been a production of Self-Realization Fellowship, a non-profit organization founded by Paramahansa Yogananda in 1920. For more information about Self-Realization Fellowship and Paramahansa Yogananda, please visit yogananda.org.